I found out that my partner wasn't loyal to me. Can we overcome this? If so, how? I've recently found out that my partner betrayed me. We started dating 4 years ago after I moved to the US. She was still living in Brazil, so we had a long-distance relationship. She has asked me for a chance since we were very young. It probably started when I was around 13 years old. I'm now 23, but I was never really able to understand and get along with her. After I moved to the US, I felt alone and separated from everything I knew, and she was still there, and looking for something solid, that I knew. I decided to give us a chance. It lasted a month, but we got back together after a year, and have basically been together ever since. It's been 4 years now. Around a year and a half ago, along with the failed attempts to get her a visa, her mother became sick, and she had to step up. Even thought she is the youngest out of 3 children, she was the one running the house and taking care of her mother. She eventually got overwhelmed with all the responsibilities, burdens, and the fact that we were not able to be close to each other. She started taking antidepressants and calming medicines to get through the day. At some point around the end of last year she cheated on me, but I only found out about it recently, along with the other betrayals I'll mention. Around 5 months ago I broke up with her because we simply couldn't talk anymore. Even though we had discussed the option of me going back to Brazil, it was like she could believe it, nor have hope for it. We spent about a month apart. During that time, I was talking to a girl I had been with in the past, about how sad I was, how hard it was to finish a relationship about almost 4 years, and she was also going through the loss of a family member, so we helped each other. My girlfriend asked me to get back together many times, but I didn't want to go back to what it had become, though when I remembered what it had once been, it hurt, and it hurt a lot. Eventually I decided to give a chance, throw everything up and go back to Brazil to give our relationship a last chance. Before I bought my tickets she told me one of the hardest things that I had to listen to. We started dating, we were both virgins, and we stuck to it for the whole time, but in this 1 month we were apart, she had slept with someone else multiple times. Note that she had also went out with this guy before we even broke up, but she claims that she didn't hook up with him then. After thinking it through, I decided that if we were able to make it work, it would have been only a spot in our lifelong story. So I kept our plans, I sold all my stuff, and moved back to Brazil to be with her. I have been here for about 3 months now, and things haven't been easy since the beginning, but it got worse about 3 weeks ago. She was already sleeping, and I was up watching a movie. Her phone rang and I looked at it. Mind you that I've had the password for all her accounts for years, but I trusted her so deeply that I've never felt the need to look or search for anything. It was a text from a guy she had been chatting, and they were having really intimate conversations, to the point she mentioned some pictures she had sent him. At that moment my floor dropped, and I started looking. She sent pictures and was flirting with him only a few days before my arrival, and meanwhile checking that, I also found out about the betrayal that happened in December last year, where she told one of her friends she had broken up with me, and went out with him, and they hooked up. She has told me that back then, she was heavy on the antidepressants, and that they numbed what she felt for me, as well as feelings of consequence and blame, which lead her to look for something, therefore the betrayal. I believe that the medicine may have played a part, but also she had been almost completely out since I got in Brazil. Right now I don't know what to do, if it's possible to continue, or if we should part ways. She promises she loves me, and that she wouldn't do it again. I want to believe her. I don't feel angry, I feel upset. I would have trusted my life in her hands, as I did. The relationship had other problems to begin with. I sometimes caught myself wanting to talk to the other girl, though I never did. We also have different mindsets when it comes to certain things and way of acting. I feel a great amount of pain when I think of letting her go, of not having her in my life anymore, of everything that we dreamed and planned together. I simply don't know how to proceed, but I'm afraid of leaving her, of being alone, of regretting not having stayed in the future when I'm older. It also hurts me seeing her cry, seeing her hurt. She's been through so much already. Sometimes I just wanted to protect her from anything else, like she's already been through enough. Her father was murdered when she was only 12, and just so many other things. Next story 2. AITA for ending a family naming tradition by not giving my son my late nephew's name as his middle name even though my sister has said she wants me to. My family have always had this tradition where the first child born after the loss of someone in the family gets the late family member's name as their middle name. My sister and I both have those middle names. Hers is Patricia after a cousin of our mom's and mine is Denise after my dad's aunt. Almost a year ago my sister lost her 2-day-old son, Philip. He was the last family member we lost and it was a huge, earth-shattering blow for our family. I found out I was pregnant a few months ago. I waited a while to tell anyone and my sister was the first person we told, privately. When I told her she said it would be nice to have some positive news to focus on and she wanted me to continue the tradition our family keeps and give my baby, if a boy, the middle name Philip. She was so happy about the idea. It surprised me a lot. I would have figured she would not be okay with it. But she wanted it. The problem is my husband and I do not want to continue with the tradition. We do not want to give our son the middle name Philip. The name isn't one either of us likes or would ever pick ourselves. We have not announced the sex of our baby yet but my husband and I know we are expecting a boy. My family were saying how amazing it will be if my baby is a boy and Philip's name can be carried on. I suggested they wait until we announce the sex and the name before jumping to conclusions. They asked why and I said we were thinking of not continuing with the tradition. My family, and by that I mean my parents mostly, were really upset. My sister was the worst though. She asked why I wouldn't want to honor Philip and why it was him the tradition was getting broken on. She asked if I saw him as meaning so little and I said no, of course not. Then she asked if it was his name and we didn't like it. She said she really hoped it wasn't that. I said we just didn't feel like the tradition was something we wanted to continue. The decision has brought up a lot of bad feelings and my sister is especially angry and thinks I'm being insensitive and showing how little I care for my nephew. I feel terrible. She's so angry at me and my parents are unhappy as well. My husband hates them for putting this pressure on us. He said we should be allowed to name our son what we want and we should not be obliged to use a certain name. I never wanted to be an asshole but my family believes I am. Comment. You and your husband have the right to name your child whatever you want. However, your family also has the right to be hurt. Not only is this a tradition, but it's a tradition that honors people the family has lost. Keep in mind how rarely a middle name is actually used. Is this something you are willing to create a fight over? That's probably going to make things worse honestly, cause then husband and his family get the blame for being the heartless bastards who break up Op's family by not honoring the tradition. Best to face it head on and united. It's a tradition they both don't want to continue, they have decided that together as the parents of the kid, which is their right, end of story. It's still not gonna go down well, but at least they'll be in it together. Yeah, that seems worse to me, especially without a good reason. Sorry, the family tradition is going to end and nobody will honor Philip because my husband is from a different family so they get priority. Without a very specific reason, that feels worse to me. Yeah sure, I'm not saying nobody will honor Philip, I'm just saying that's how I think the family will hear it. You, sister, family, and the deceased nephew, don't matter because my husband's desires, or my husband's family's traditions, are more important. In the difficult emotional situation they are in, I could somewhat understand why they might feel that way too, if the husband or his family are made the scapegoat. It sounds like the tradition from your family isn't compatible with the tradition in his family, that the parents name their children whatever they want. I understand you had to pick one tradition to follow and chose his. You're right, but this is also no reason to continue a tradition. Just because something has always been done traditionally doesn't make it sensible, correct, or in any way justifiable. Sort of, my parents wanted to start a tradition that none of their kids are named after family members. They didn't even give me their preferred middle name after realizing it was dad's sister's confirmation name. Only problem is neither my brother or I ended up having kids. Same. My grandflat refused to use the traditional family naming for my dad, and he still chose to resume it later with one of my brothers. By her account, she was ready to throw fists with my great-granddad over it, while in the hospital for delivery. Settled for cussing him out. She won the name fight. Name your kid whatever you want, you and your husband are the only ones that need to be happy about it. It's your kid and your life. Sure, your family will be hurt and they aren't AHS either for being upset about the ending of the tradition. However, they will get over it and the guilt tripping over it needs to end. If they continue with the guilt tripping over the name, they are the AHS. Both of you have expressed your points of view and it should end after that. You'll resent it every time anyone asks where Philip came from, every time someone misspells it, and later when your lad asks you where his middle name came from. Or you'll resent it when your sister somehow manages to be the first person to tell your child where his name came from. Can you trust her to not give your child MIA replacement Philip thoughts? Every time, you'll think that damn name, I just don't like it. My boy is not a Philip. You are allowed to grieve and process the loss of Philip in your own way. You do not owe it to anyone to name your child after anyone else. Why do they need to consider how much it will be used? It's their child, and the family is not entitled to naming it for them. I totally understand why the family is hurt, but these are things they need to talk through instead of trying to shame up into falling into line. Plus, giving your child a name that belonged to a child in the family who died can be a lot to handle. They may have memories surrounding the baby that hurt when their name is brought up. You can't force someone, family or not, to make such a personal decision like that. You can't dictate how someone honors the deceased.